This is the first tutorial for Unit 2. In this demo, you'll learn how to use the basic sketch tools in Google Slides to plan out a robot path. You'll document the steps in your plan by generating pseudocode. And then finally, you'll program your VR robot to follow the path that you planned in the previous two steps, and you'll troubleshoot your program as you test it out in the playground environment. So let's begin with the sketch. So you'll see in my example here, I have a sketch for a robot path. The robot's down here in the lower left-hand corner. I have segments showing each move that the robot's going to take, and then I've numbered each of those segments using a text box. So if we go down here to the template, this is the template that you've been given. To begin with, I'm going to start with a vertical move because I'm doing the letter P. So I'm going to select my vertical arrow over here. And keep in mind, if you already know how to use the drawing tools and you know how to generate arrows and curves, then feel free to fast forward, move ahead, and do this on your own. But if you've never done this before, the easiest way is by clicking on one of the segments that's up here. And then on my keyboard, I'm going to hit Control C to copy and then Control V to paste. Now I'm working on a Mac, so on the Mac, it's the Command button. But you'll notice it pasted a copy of it. So now I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to nudge it along. If I hold down the Shift key while I nudge it, you'll notice it moves a little bit faster. All right, so it takes a larger jump each time. And if I hold down the key as I'm doing now, you can see it just moves along. Now, if you had a mouse or if you're proficient with your trackpad, you could just click and drag this wherever you want. All right, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the node on the end of it and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it up. Now, if I hold down my Shift key while I drag, so let's undo that. If I hold down my Shift key, it will lock it in at some standard angles, right? So you can see it snapping to those angles. All right, so in this case, I'm going to drag it up and I'm going to lock it there. I'll grab the bottom and bring that down here so it starts where my robot starts. Now it's not perfectly aligned with the center of my robot, and if you want to be finicky, right, you can use the arrow keys to nudge it along. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to put in a turn. So I'm going to grab the turn over here, and just like before, I'm going to hit Control C to copy, Control V to paste. If you're on a Mac, it's Command. And then I'll use the Shift key and my arrow keys to nudge it into place. Again, if you're proficient with the drawing tools, then, maybe you want to move things around with the mouse. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to grab the next segment, Command C, Command V, or Control C, Control V on the PC. And Shift, and then use my arrow key to move it down into place. I'm going to stretch it, so I'm going to grab the right-hand node or anchor point, and I'm going to stretch it across. I'm going to hold down my Shift key so it comes straight. Let go of the mouse before you let go of the Shift key. That's a trick there. All right, so now I'm going to use this corner, Control C, Control V, nudge. So by now, you're probably figuring it's a lot of rinse and repeat to be able to get all these corners. Now, what about when I get down here? All right, if we go back to the example that I showed on the first slide, you'll notice that I don't have an arrow that's pointing in that direction, right? I don't have a turn or a corner arrow that's pointing to the left, right? This one's pointing to the right. This one's pointing to the right. This one's curving to the right. So how do I do that? So let's go back over here. All right. And in this case, I'm going to grab an arrow that I know is pointing down. All right. Control C, Control V, and hold on my Shift key and move it. All right, so now I got it somewhere where you can see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it. Now, if you're using a trackpad, you don't have a right click. So you need to do a two-finger click. All right, a two-finger click allows me to come down here and you can see I can order, I can rotate. What I want to do is I want to go to my rotate menu and inside there, I want to flip it. All right, in this case, I'm going to flip it horizontally. All right, and when I do, now it's pointing the other way, right? So when I started, it was pointing to the right. Now it's pointing to the left. So I can move this over into position. All right. So hopefully from that, you've seen enough to be able to go ahead and create the segments that you need. Some other things to keep in mind. All right. If you want to do, let's say you want to do the letter K, for instance. All right. So let me back up and I'll get rid of some of these. All right. So for me to do the letter K, I'm going to go forward, but then I want to come back to the middle of this and I'm going to go out and back. Right. So my robot can go in reverse, but I want to plan it, of course. So I'm going to grab the down arrow, Control C and Control V, and then I'll use my arrow keys to nudge that into place. All right. Now I'm not going to put it right on top of the other arrow, and I know full well that it's going to, it's going to be on the same path. But if I put it right on top of the other arrow, it doesn't help me in terms of seeing the sequence in the steps. So I've got it right next to it. All right. So I've gone up. I'm now backed up back towards the middle. So now I want to turn and I want to go out. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a turn and Control C, Control V, nudge, holding the Shift key. Now, am I doing a complete right turn or a 90-degree turn? No, but I'm putting in the turn anyways, just so I don't forget to add the turn in my programming. All right, so now I'm going to grab this vertical arrow, Command C, Command V, sorry, Control, if you're on a PC. So I'll move this into place. And in this case, what I'm going to do, instead of holding down the Shift key when I stretch this out, is I'm going to stretch it out at an angle. All right, now, if you look at the boxes or the grid on the back of this, you'll see that the grid on the back is squares. So if I have a line that goes diagonally across the square, that's at a 45-degree angle. Okay. So that's really nice for me to know. And if I try to plot my lines along those diagonals, then it's really easy for me to program, right? Anything else, like, if I pull this in a little bit tighter, now I'm no longer at 45 degrees because I'm not going across my diagonal corners. All right, so now I know it's going to be less than 45 degrees. How much less? Maybe 30. Hard to say. So if I stick to the diagonals, it might just, the diagonal corners, then it might make my life easier from a programming standpoint. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to paste it. And the reality is I want it to go out and back to the same point. So what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to change my arrow, the arrowhead orientation. So without modifying the line, I'm just going to come up here and you'll see I have line start and line end. Right now, my line start has an arrowhead, my line end has nothing. So I'm going to change my line end to an arrowhead, and I'm going to change my line start to nothing. And then if we click off, you can see that on this one, it's going to come out here. And then on this one, it's going to come back. All right, so I'm indicating that my robot is going out and back. All right, so now that I'm back here, I'm going to do the same thing again. Um, I could grab another line, stretch it out, or I can grab these two lines, right? Copy and paste. And some of you might be figuring like you already know what's going to happen here. All right, if you were paying attention before, you said you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, didn't he have a way to flip them? So I'm going to flip these vertically, which means it's going to flip it top to bottom instead of left to right. And when I flip it vertically, you're going to notice something. Look at that. I got two lines that I can now nudge into place. I'm holding down my shift key, so when I press the arrows, right, it's going to move nice and easy for me, a little bit faster. So now I've got up, back, turn, out, and back. I need another turn. So let's go over here and grab this one. Copy, paste, nudge. All right, how much are we turning? Well, you're going to have to play around with some of those numbers, All right. Now, if you want to adjust this turn, you can grab this little handle here and you can use that to help you spin it. All right. And now I'm going to have to turn one more time probably to be able to go down straight. So I'll grab this one, copy, paste, nudge it down, and then I'm just going to grab the rotate handle. If I hold down my shift key, I can rotate it in standard increments. All right. Put this up here. Now, admittedly, the K is one of the harder ones to do, but it can be done. So now I'm going to copy and paste this. I'll shorten this up a little bit and then move this down here. All right. So I have all of my steps here. I don't have a sequence order. And that was the other thing I said I wanted. Like, so if we go back to my example up here, the letter P, you'll see I very clearly put numbers next to all of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to show you how to add numbers. So I'm going to start by grabbing the text box tool. I'll click and drag out a text box on my design space, and I'm going to type the number 1. Now, the number 1 right now is kind of small and hard to read, at least for my old eyes. So I'm going to make it bigger. Let's go with a point size of maybe 25. And I'm going to make it bold. And if you want to give it a color, fine. Just make sure it's a color that is easy to read. So like if you do yellow, yellow is kind of hard to read on a white background. So maybe not the best one to use. So now I'm going to click off and then I'm going to click on it again. All right. If you get the cursor, you can see the cursor's flashing. Sometimes you need to like click on the edge of it. All right. Notice there's no cursor anymore. Now I can use my arrow tool to nudge it along. All right. And if you want to try and click and drag it along, that's fine too. So I'll put my number 1 over here. And then I'm going to hit Control C and Control V to paste. And the reason I'm doing that is because this helps me keep track of my sequence. All right, so I'm going to double click on the number 1 and change that to number 2. Click off, select it. All right, Command or Control C, Control V. All right, I can move this down here because I need to take into account this turn here at the corner. Change that to 3. Click off. All right. Make sure I'm on the edge or clicking on the edge of the boundary box. Control C, Control V. All right, we'll move this up. Again, I'm holding down the shift key so I can move in faster increments. Change that to 4. Grab the edge of it. Copy paste. Bring that down here. Change that to 5. So hopefully you guys are starting to see that, this is doable. All right, copy paste. It's just a lot of rinse and repeat. All right, when you're planning out a path like this. And think of that word repeat. There may be some times in our code where we want to be able to repeat some code. Okay. Is it the best method for us to write the same lines of code over and over and over again? Hint, there's a better way. All right. So now, just about done setting up this sequence numbers. Copy paste. And you'll notice I'm always copying and pasting the last number. Okay, the reason for that is I know what the next step number is, right? So if I always pasted the number 1 every time, then I'd have to think, okay, is this step number 1, 2, 3, whatever. All right, so put that one there. Number 9, select, copy paste, move that down. And now I have 10 steps. Okay. Now, ultimately, I may have more than 10 steps, but um, I want to be able to do my second initial or the initial for my last name, right? So now that I'm back here, where am I going to go to get to the starting position for that second initial? Okay, and that's that's based on your drawing. So I'm not going to draw out the whole thing, but hopefully by now you see how we can copy and paste segments from here. We can modify them, rotate them, flip them, and then add the numbers. Okay. So go ahead on to the next video. In the next video, we're going to show you how we write pseudocode. All right. And pseudocode is just a matter of writing down a descriptor or a short statement that says, I want the robot to move forward. I want the robot to move backwards. I want the robot to turn. I want the robot to move forward, backwards, turn, forward, backwards, turn, forward. Okay. So again, go on to the next video and we'll go over the pseudocode for this.